This is Rummy's Corner. After a prolonged wait of more than 5 years, it finally happened on May 2nd, 2015. The long-awaited showdown between Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Manny Pacquiao. Most feel it ultimately happened 4 or 5 years too late. Hard to believe that the fight itself was more than 7 years ago now, which incidentally was right around the time I started this channel. 7 long years ago. Wow. Time sure does fly. And yet amazingly, at least a couple of times a week, each and every week since, I still see the same debates over and over and over again online. Who was greater, Mayweather or Pacquiao? And those conversations often boil down to the debate about which accomplishment was greater. The perfect unblemished 50-0 mark of the great Floyd Mayweather Jr. or the unprecedented accomplishment of the great Manny Pacquiao becoming the only 8-division champion during the long, rich history of boxing. Well, I personally do not think that is an easy question to answer, nor do I believe that those unprecedented landmark achievements define the true greatness of either boxer. The simple fact is, we may not see another 8-division champion for years. And it may likewise take years before we get another championship caliber boxer to retire who has 50 or more victories without suffering a loss or a draw. Both of these accomplishments are historically unique, but both are a little overstated in the sense that I do not believe that either feat is the sole factor in determining the greatness of Mayweather or Pacquiao. The accomplishments themselves might be a bit overstated in the sense that boxing has changed a lot over the years. And then you get people who question the validity of the landmark accomplishments themselves. It's no coincidence, however, that the loudest Mayweather detractors tend to be Pacquiao fans, and the loudest Manny detractors tend to be Floyd fans. Mayweather has 50 wins in 50 professional contests, but a lot of people believe Castillo deserved a nod in his first fight against Floyd. And then in his 50th and final professional contest, Floyd faced Conor McGregor, who despite having experience in combat sports, was making his professional boxing debut. So that one was sanctioned as a professional bout when many felt it had more of an exhibition vibe. Then there are some observers who believe that Floyd deserved 2 or even more losses on his record. Some fans will even go so far to claim that a slow-mo viewing of the Pacquiao fight somehow proves a Pacquiao victory. Pacquiao is the only 8-division world champion, but he was perhaps fortunate that he got to compete for the vacant 154-pound title at a catch weight of 150 pounds against a boxer who was not only unproven north of 147, but his reputation was also a big mess at the time in the aftermath of having his license revoked when substances containing 2 primary elements of plaster of Paris were found in his confiscated hand wraps prior to his match against Shane Mosley. And technically, Pacquiao did not win an alphabet title at 126 or 140, although Barrera and Hatton respectively were the legit lineal champions of those divisions at the time. Point being, those accomplishments alone don't define either guy. It takes a special boxer to obtain these unique landmarks, but don't let the statistics get in the way of the fact that these guys were special regardless of any of that. The truth is, the sport changes with time. Rules change. Potential earnings change for the guys at or near the top. And those achievements themselves are largely a product of the time, where if Pacquiao and Floyd competed in, say, the 1940s, those statistical accomplishments would not likely have been possible. Times change, and an overemphasis on 50-0 or 8-division champion loses the plot, and in my opinion, it actually detracts from their true greatness to some extent. The accomplishments don't make Floyd or Manny great. It's the other way around. The fact that they were both great enabled them to achieve these amazing things. Pacquiao and Mayweather both had the tremendous work ethic and natural talents that blessed them both with great longevity. But then you have a guy from their very own era like Bernard Hopkins. Bernard was the godfather of the modern day era, becoming the first undisputed champion in any weight class during the modern four-belt era. And he was also the oldest world champion in any weight class, competing at the championship level until he was 2 months shy of 50, when he entered the ring as a unified champion in yet another unification bout against the prime Sergey Kovalev. Like Pacquiao and Mayweather, Bernard was a special boxer. If being a unified champion, with 2 belts already competing for 3 of the big 4, just shy of 50, any less sensational than 50-0 or 8 divisions? Even in a day and age where athletes are competing longer, Bernard is a unique standout. None of this is meant to downplay any of these accomplishments, quite the contrary. It may take years and years before we see any of these landmarks matched or topped. But again, these statistical landmarks are largely the product of the time. Bernard Hopkins was the godfather of the modern-day four-belt era as its first undisputed world champion. And he is likewise the grandfather of boxing as the oldest world champion ever, even older than Big George Foreman. And with Foreman, there was the big gap too. He originally lost the heavyweight championship against Muhammad Ali in October 1974, and he won it back in November 1994, with more than 20 years in between. So George wasn't just the oldest heavyweight champion, but the gap itself is just mind-bogglingly incredible stuff. When old man Foreman shocked the world and knocked out the undefeated 26-year-old Michael Moore. But even these accomplishments are arguably a product of the time. But Foreman is still the oldest to win and defend the heavyweight championship, and Bernard is the oldest boxer to win and defend any world championship. And those are damn impressive in any context. And since we're talking about a pair of legendary badass grandpas in Bernard and Big George, it is only fair to mention the OG himself, Archie Moore, the old mongoose. Depending on whether you believe Archie was born in 1913 or 1916, he didn't even get the opportunity to challenge for a world title until shortly after turning 36 or 39. Either way, the old mongoose was triumphant when he defeated Joey Maxim to win the light heavyweight world championship. Archie reigned as such for nearly 10 full years, during which time he not only successfully defended the light heavyweight crown, but he was actively competing at heavyweight and working his way up the rankings, which earned him 2 unsuccessful shots at the heavyweight championship. People tend to only remember his losses at heavyweight, but Archie won like 60-something fights at heavyweight, including many victories versus ranked contenders to earn his shot. If you look up the old mongoose on BoxRec, his official professional record reads 186 victories, with 132 of those wins coming by way of knockout. Oof, maron. 50-0, 8 division world champion, unified champion at age 49. Those are records that may take years to be broken, and perhaps none of them ever will be. What the hell do I know? I'm not exactly Quasimodo over here. Regardless, 132 knockouts. Archie Moore, the old mongoose. I mean, it's tough to imagine that mark ever being matched again. I mean, how many boxers even get to 100 victories these days? Roberto Duran and Julio Cesar Chavez come to mind, but those guys retired more than 15 years ago now. Even with an amazing talent like the old mongoose, the statistical numbers are largely a product of the time. If you get too caught up in the statistics, it's easy to miss the bigger picture about what makes these guys great. Mayweather's record naturally gets a lot of comparisons, with Marciano finishing a perfect 49-0. Marciano, like Mayweather, had a couple of wins on his record where the verdict could have gone the other way. And so what if it did? If Marciano was 48-1 and Floyd was 49-1, would that suddenly make either guy less great? In the case of Marciano, he was the only heavyweight to retire and remain retired with a perfect record, and he was a perfect 7-0 in title bouts. Rocky gets a lot of criticism because he faced a lot of older greats. But Jersey Joe Walcott was the reigning heavyweight world champion, and he beat all the best guys of his time. Rocky also gets criticized because he didn't beat any bigger heavyweights. But the one he maybe could have faced was Nino Valdez, who had just lost for the second time against Archie, 2 fights prior to the old mongoose challenging Rocky. But the greater point, I think at times too much emphasis can be placed on being undefeated. Ricardo Lopez was 51-0-1. Or look at Tyson Fury now. He's 32-0-1. If he truly remains retired, is that draw really a black eye on his ledger? And then what about some of the truly legendary unbeaten streaks by guys like Jimmy Wild or Packy McFarland? Pacquiao's claim to being the only champion in 8 divisions is mighty impressive. Make no mistake about it. But Pacquiao may not have had the chance had he competed in an era that only truly respected the traditional 8 weight classes. Look no further than the great Henry Armstrong as a point of comparison. Homicide Hank simultaneously held the featherweight world championship, the lightweight world championship, and the welterweight world championship. That was 126, 135, and 147 at the same time. If 122, 130, 140, and 154 were available back then, and there were 4 alphabet bodies, could a badass like Armstrong have been in the same ballpark as Pacquiao? The fact that Armstrong once held all 3 world championships at the same time is, in itself, a product of the times. Because at certain points in boxing history, you weren't allowed to hold championships in multiple weight classes at the same time. Enter Sugar Ray Robinson, widely viewed as the greatest pound-for-pound boxer of all time, and almost universally recognized as the greatest welterweight of all time. The great Sugar Ray never lost as a welterweight. In fact, his only loss in his first 130-something fights was against a middleweight when Ray was outweighed by about 16 pounds. Robinson challenged Jake LaMotta for the middleweight world championship, his former conqueror, in what would be their 6th bout in the rivalry. Professional boxing rules at that time did not allow for any boxer to hold 2 world championships simultaneously, so the circumstances were inherently different than when Armstrong reigned. Keeping with the Sugar Ray Robinson theme, Ray Robinson was a 5-time undisputed middleweight world champion. That one doesn't seem likely to happen again, in any weight class. Some people might downplay this achievement, instead pointing to the fact that to win it 5 times, he lost it 3 times. But the truth is, Ray was a much different fighter after his first retirement. After his failed bid against Joey Maxim, the same guy the old mongoose beat to win his light heavyweight world championship, Robinson became an entertainer, a song and dance guy. After being out of the ring for nearly 3 years, he was still competing against some awesome middleweights like Gene Fullmer, and even past his best, Robinson was the only man to ever stop Fullmer. Now let's turn our attention to the great Joe Louis, the gold standard for consecutive title defenses in any weight class. And he just so happened to do it in boxing's marquee weight class. 25 consecutive title defenses. And this wasn't just a single alphabet strap. This was the undisputed heavyweight world championship, where he won 26 title fights in a row before his first retirement. Could that record ever be broken? Maybe in these times, if we're talking about a single alphabet belt or a 2-belt unified champion for some of the reign or whatever, it could happen. In recent years, guys like Joe Calzaghe and Bernard got to 20. It's not inconceivable, but if you hold a modern-day boxer to the standard of doing all of that as the one and only undisputed champion, I mean, unless some drastic changes come along to rid the sport of the great abundance of alphabet soup and the accompanying politics, it's never going to happen. It just isn't. It's impossible. The man, the myth, the legend. The great Harry Greb fought 16 fellow Hall of Famers in a total of 48 contests, beating 15 and drawing with the other. Greb once fought 45 times in under a year without suffering a loss, and he averaged over 20 fights per year. Victories against 15 Hall of Famers. That's another tough one to beat. But Greb himself acts as a perfect representation of how much the sport has changed with time. Because in these days, I'm not even sure you can get enough bouts sanctioned to average 20 fights a year over a career. Or circling back to the old mongoose, 132 knockouts. Oof, that's an awful lot of knockouts. And since I kind of started down this rabbit hole talking about ageless warriors with guys like Big George and Bernard and the old mongoose, just to take a quick look at the opposite end of the spectrum, Wilfred Benitez still holds the record for the youngest boxing champion ever at age 17 years, 5 months, and 24 days. Will that unique mark ever be bested? Will any of them? When you look at Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Manny Pacquiao, forgetting the celebrated numbers that I believe are largely a product of the time, like so many other outstanding unique landmarks in boxing history, for me, Mayweather and Pacquiao are easily the two best in their era. In my opinion, both of them can and should be reasonably ranked somewhere in the 15 to 30 range on all-time lists. Who you rank higher, I believe, mostly boils down to personal preference. One way or another, however you slice it, I don't think there is much separating them. But that's just my opinion. I am by no means whatsoever the final authority, or any type of authority for that matter. Just my opinion, and plenty of fans will disagree with me. Hell, I've seen people have each of them, Mayweather or Pacquiao, as the GOAT, the greatest of all time. Okay, take it easy. Who the hell am I to tell these people they're wrong? For me personally, when I think of the elite among the elite, that top tier group of the most incredible of the extraordinary during the long, rich history of boxing, in no specific order, the names that always jump to mind for me are Sugar Ray Robinson, Henry Armstrong, Sam Langford, Harry Greb, Muhammad Ali, Joe Louis, and the Cincinnati Cobra, the great Ezzard Charles. While I personally wouldn't hold Mayweather and Pacquiao in quite the same esteem, if others believe they are in that elite group, even if it is just a small minority in the grand scheme, then they have become a legitimate part of the discussion. If you think Floyd is the best boxer of all time, or if you think Pacquiao is the greatest boxer of all time, I'm not here to tell you you're wrong. I would, however, strongly and respectfully disagree. Boxing changes with the times. The rules change and evolve. And in today's boxing, we have 12-round championship contests, 17 weight classes, and 4 major alphabet belts. In fact, 18 divisions if you include the WBC Bridgerweight thing, compared to a day and age when there were effectively 8 weight classes and only 1 champion per division. It's a fundamentally completely different ballgame. Why am I saying all of this? The greater point I'm trying to make is that statistics alone do not define greatness, and it's easy to overstate some of these landmark achievements without considering the proper context of the time. At the end of the day, Mayweather and Pacquiao were both special. Bernard was special. And then you have Roy Jones. Much like the case between Mayweather and Pacquiao, the same theme applies with Bernard and Roy. You can't talk about one without talking about the other. And you go back, you have Sweet Pea, Pernell Whitaker. And you go back a little further and you have the Fab Four of the 1980s. Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard, Thomas the Hitman Hearns, and Marvelous Marvin Hagler. Boxing has an awfully rich history, and during that time, there have been a lot of truly awesome and fascinating special boxers. Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Manny Pacquiao proved themselves as the two best in their era. They should be celebrated for being extraordinary boxers who left their mark in the sport forever to be remembered in the annals of boxing history. regardless of a perfect 50-0, and regardless of being an 8th division champion, and regardless of whether those unique feats ever get topped. I, for one, appreciate the contributions each man gave to boxing, and I actually believe that is true of the silent majority when it comes to the never-ending debate, Mayweather or Pacquiao. That's all I got. Please share your thoughts in the comments section. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed, and have a wonderful night. This is Rummy's Corner.
50-0, 8 divisions, 50-0, 8 divisions, 50-0, 8 divisions.
You know, Quasimodo predicted all this.